I never cared much for the HOA, probably because I wasn't a part of it. Never signed up, never wanted to, and sure as hell didn't need some clipboard-wielding busybody telling me what color my barn should be or how short my grass needed to be. My land was my land, and that was the end of it. At least, that's what I thought. See, my farm has been in my family for generations. A good stretch of land, rich soil, and the kind of open space that makes you feel like you've got a little piece of freedom all to yourself. I worked it like my father did before me, and his father before him. And unlike the pristine, cookie-cutter houses of the HOA-controlled neighborhood next door, my place had character, which, in HOA terms, means it wasn't up to their standards. For the most part, I ignored them, and they ignored me. That changed when Karen showed up. Now, I don't know what her real name is, but everyone calls her Karen. Even her fellow HOA members whisper it behind her back. She's the kind of woman who thinks the universe runs on her schedule, and if it doesn't, she'll just file a complaint until it does. HOA president, self-appointed neighborhood queen, and apparently an expert in deciding what's best for everyone. Which is why, on a quiet Saturday morning, I found a parade of HOA folks setting up folding tables and lawn chairs on my land. At first, I thought I was seeing things. I just finished fixing my tractor when I spotted them through the trees. Dozens of people, carting coolers, grills, and even one of those inflatable bounce houses. It looked like they were preparing for a damn festival. I strolled over, calm as could be. Something I can help y'all with? A man in a pastel sweater vest turned to me, holding a plate of what looked like deviled eggs. Oh, we're just setting up for the HOA's annual community picnic. I raised an eyebrow. On my farm, a woman wearing a sun hat too big for her head stepped forward. Karen, oh, don't be so dramatic. It's just a little event. The kids need space to play, and your land was the perfect spot. It's not like you're using it for anything important today. I took a deep breath. This is private property. Karen gave me the kind of smile you give a toddler who doesn't understand why they can't have ice cream for breakfast. Oh, I checked. There's no fence, no trespassing signs. That means it's fair use. I stared at her for a solid 3 seconds. That's not how property laws work. Well, she said, waving a hand dismissively. If you have such a huge issue with it, why don't you just join the HOA? Then you could participate in these lovely community events. I nearly laughed. Yeah, no? You've got 5 minutes to pack this up before I start calling the sheriff. Karen scoffed. Oh, come on. We do this every year, and the previous owner never complained. I crossed my arms. Lady, I am the previous owner. Her smile twitched. The sweater vest guy cleared his throat. Maybe we should wrap this up. No, Karen snapped. We are not moving. This is a neighborhood tradition, and we have rights. Oh, I had to bite my tongue on that one. Instead, I nodded. All right, y'all enjoy yourselves. Then I turned around and walked back toward my house. Not to sulk, not to let it slide. Oh no, I had a phone call to make, and I knew just the man for the job. I shut my front door behind me and let out a slow breath, rubbing my temples. The absolute nerve of these people. Not just trespassing, acting like they were entitled to it. I could have called the sheriff, sure. But Karen and her clipboard cult would probably drag it out with complaints and loopholes. And frankly, I wanted something a little more memorable. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Frank Maverick Dawson, old Air Force buddy of mine. We served together way back, and while I spent my years afterward farming, he took a different route, crop dusting. He had himself a good little operation going, running a plane over fields, treating them with whatever chemicals the farmers needed. But more importantly, I knew something most folks didn't. Farmers don't just have pesticides and fertilizers. We've also got dye. Bright, bold, unmistakable dye. I hit call. Frank picked up on the second ring. Well, I'll be damned. Haven't heard from you in a while. You finally decide to come out of retirement. Not today, I said with a grin. But I do have a little job for you. Oh yeah. I explained the situation, and by the time I finished, Frank was laughing so hard I thought he'd dropped the phone. Let me get this straight, he wheezed. Some HOA weirdos decided your land was their personal party spot, and they refused to leave? That's about the size of it. He let out a low whistle. Well, I do have a tank full of blue irrigation dye I was going to use tomorrow. Be a real shame if I had to. Oops. Accidentally use it up today. I chuckled. I'd hate for you to waste it. How soon you need me in the air? I peeked out the window. They were still out there, setting up their little buffet tables and lawn games like they owned the place. 10 minutes too soon. Frank laughed. I'll be there in 5. I stepped back onto my porch and leaned against the railing, watching the HOA party unfold. Karen, now comfortably seated at a folding table, was sipping what I assumed was some overpriced organic lemonade. The kids were running around with balloons, the men were gathered around a grill flipping burgers, and some of the ladies were setting up a cake table. They were settling in. I could see it in their movements, the way they spread out their picnic blankets, the way they turned up the music like this was their backyard. They weren't planning to leave anytime soon, which made what was about to happen so much better. I heard the distant hum before they did. A low, steady drone in the sky, faint at first, but getting louder. Closer. I fought the urge to grin. The first person to notice was the guy at the grill. He squinted up at the sky, spatula frozen mid-air. Huh, that's weird. Then someone else looked up. Is that a plane? Karen, of course, didn't bother turning her head. Oh, don't be silly. It's probably just a commercial flight. Then came the roar. Frank's plane swooped in low, a sleek little crop duster slicing through the sky. I could already picture him in the cockpit, grinning ear to ear. The HOA party froze. A few people stood up, shading their eyes. Karen finally turned her head. What in the hell? And then Frank released the payload. A torrential downpour of bright, electric blue dye sprayed across the entire field. It was glorious. It hit them all at once. People screamed. Lawn chairs tipped over. The guy with the deviled eggs? He dove for cover, right into the bounce house, which promptly deflated under him. Mothers grabbed their kids and ran, streaks of blue dripping down their faces like some kind of alien horror movie. Karen shrieked, waving her arms wildly as if she could physically fight the dye. Frank made a second pass, just to be thorough. By the time he finished, the entire HOA party looked like a gathering of avatars. Dripping, streaked with blue, completely unrecognizable. I stood on my porch, arms crossed, and watched the chaos unfold. Karen, now entirely blue from head to toe, stomped toward me, spluttering. What have you done? I shrugged. Oh, I checked. There weren't any fences or no trespassing signs up. That means it's fair use, right? Her eyes bulged. I swear, I've never seen a woman that furious and that ridiculous looking at the same time. But the best part? She couldn't do a damn thing about it, because she was on my land. For a moment, all Karen could do was stand there, dripping blue, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Around her, the rest of the HOA was in full-blown retreat mode. Mothers bundling up their now Smurf-colored kids, men scrambling to grab their belongings, and at least 3 people slipping in the blue-drenched grass. It was a thing of beauty. The guy in the sweater vest, who now looked like an unfortunate paintball victim, kept rubbing his arms, eyes wide with panic. Oh my God, it won't come off. No, it won't, I said oh so helpfully. That there's agricultural dye, designed to stick to crops through rain and wind. Y'all are going to be looking real colorful for the next couple weeks. Weeks? Karen shrieked. I nodded. Yep. But hey, look on the bright side. You just made history. First ever Blue Man Group, HOA meeting. One of the dads, his khakis now looking like some failed tie-dye experiment, turned to Karen in horror. I have a meeting on Monday. What am I supposed to do? Karen, ever the fearless leader, sputtered and pointed at me. This is illegal. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. Illegal? How? You assaulted us. I let out a long, slow whistle. Assault? Nah, I'd call it irrigation. My buddy's a crop duster, just doing some field treatment. I gestured toward the sky where Frank's plane was making one last loop before heading off. Matter of fact, y'all just happened to be in the field at the time. Karen clenched her fists so hard I thought she might pop a blood vessel. You did this on purpose. I grinned. Oh, absolutely. At that moment, a blue-streaked teenager ran past, sobbing. A little boy in a baseball cap tripped over a cooler, landing face first in a pie. Someone's golden retriever, now bright cyan, happily shook himself off, spraying blue droplets over a group of screaming ladies. The whole scene was glorious chaos. Karen, realizing she wasn't going to win this fight, turned on and stomped back toward the rest of the HOA refugees. "Pack it up. We're leaving." Oh, they left, all right. But not quietly. They scrambled to gather their folding chairs, their plastic plates, their once white now blue decorations. A few brave souls attempted to wipe the dye from their faces with napkins, only to realize that all they were doing was spreading it more evenly. It was like watching an army retreat after losing a battle they never should have started. The guy at the grill abandoned his half-cooked burgers. The woman who brought the cake left it behind in her rush, the poor thing now half-trampled and just as blue as the rest of them. I stood on my porch and waved cheerfully as they hurried off my land. "Y'all come back now, why here?" Karen shot me a look that could melt steel. And then, just like that, they were gone. All that remained was the wreckage, a field of knocked-over chairs, discarded plates, and a whole lot of blue footprints leading back toward the HOA neighborhood. I stretched, feeling pretty damn good about myself. But the fun wasn't over yet. No, the best part was still to come. Because by the time they made it back to their pristine little neighborhood, everyone would know exactly what happened. By the time the HOA caravan reached their pristine little neighborhood, the damage was done. Word spreads fast in communities like theirs, especially when a herd of bright blue residents comes stumbling through the streets like some bizarre alien migration. Neighbors stepped out onto their porches. Some gasped. Some covered their mouths in horror. A few kids pointed and laughed. One old man watering his lawn took a long, slow sip from his beer and muttered, "Well, I'll be damned." Karen led the charge, marching down the sidewalk like a furious blueberry general. She was still dripping, her once crisp white blouse now a blotchy mess of sky blue humiliation. Behind her, the rest of the HOA followed, men, women, children, even pets, all covered in dye. "Mom, why is Mrs. Thompson blue?" a little girl asked from a nearby driveway. "Don't stare, sweetie," her mother whispered, though she was very much staring herself. Karen clenched her fists. "Inside. All of you. Now." But there was no escaping the judgmental eyes of their neighbors. One poor guy, still in his pastel golf attire, shuffled past a group of dads washing their cars. "Hey, Greg," one of them called out. "New look." Greg mumbled something about unexpected irrigation and power walked into his house. A woman ran up to Karen, clearly trying to hold back laughter. "Karen, what happened?" Karen's face twitched. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Then finally, in the tightest voice imaginable, she hissed, "It was an accident." The woman blinked. "An accident?" "Yes. We were at the picnic, and there was an unfortunate farming incident." A snort came from the back of the group. Someone muttered, "That was no accident." Karen spun around, but she was too late. The damage to her reputation was already irreversible. The mighty, powerful HOA president, the woman who prided herself on order, control, and neighborhood perfection, was now the laughingstock of the entire community. And me? I was back at my farm, grinning like a damn fool. Now, you'd think that'd be the end of it, right? That Karen and her Smurf patrol would lick their wounds and pretend it never happened? Oh no. See, agricultural dye doesn't just wash off. It sticks around. It clings. It stains. By Monday morning, there were blue-tinted HOA members everywhere. Karen showed up to her usual coffee spot, trying to wear a scarf and a wide-brimmed hat to hide the streaks still clinging to her skin. Didn't work. The barista handed her a cup labeled Blueberry Special. Greg went to work only to have his entire office burst out laughing the moment he walked in. Some of the kids thought it was awesome, showing off their still blue hands like war wounds. Others, not so much. One poor teenager tried to scrub it off so hard, he ended up with raw patches on his arms. And Karen? She stayed inside for next 3 whole days. I'd like to think she was furiously Googling how to remove farm dye the entire time. But the best part? They never set foot on my land again. Not a single gathering. Not a single picnic. Hell, one time I saw Karen walking her dog near my property line, and she crossed the street to avoid stepping too close. I guess the memory of running for her life, covered in blue, while an old crop duster pilot cackled from the sky, was a little too much for her. And that, my friends, is how you out HOA the HOA. Weeks passed, but the incident refused to die. See, when something this ridiculous happens in a small, nosy community, it doesn't just get forgotten. Oh no, it becomes legend. They started calling it the Blue Baptism. Apparently, some of the neighborhood kids turned it into a folk tale. I overheard a couple of them whispering near the general store one day. If you cross into the old farmer's land, the sky will open up and turn you blue forever. Dramatic? Yes. Hilarious? Absolutely. Even outside the neighborhood, people were talking. Folks at the feed store grinned at me when I walked in. Heard you got some new irrigation methods going on, one of them joked. Another guy whistled. Karen's still blue, or she finally scrubbed it off? I just shrugged. Hard to tell. I don't see her much these days. And that was the absolute best part. She'd gone quiet. For someone who lived to micromanage the entire neighborhood, she sure as hell wasn't making any more bold moves. No more surprise community events on my land. No more veiled threats about joining the HOA. No more Karen. One day, I was out fixing my fence when a car pulled up near my property line. It was Karen. She stepped out, looking, well, normal. No more blue tint. No more wild eyes of vengeance. She just stood there, hands clenched at her sides. I didn't say anything. Just waited. Finally, after a long, awkward silence, she cleared her throat. We won't be using your land anymore. I smirked. Oh, you sure? I was going to get some pink dye for next time. Her eye twitched, but she held her tongue, nodded stiffly, and got back in her car. And just like that, she was gone. After that, things went back to normal. The HOA stayed on their side of the line, and I kept farming on mine. But every once in a while, I'd see little reminders of that glorious day. Like the one stubborn blue patch on Karen's front porch railing that just wouldn't scrub off. Or the faded streaks on a few of the sidewalks where people had run through still wet dye. Or the time I spotted Greg at the grocery store, wearing a long-sleeved shirt in the middle of summer. But the best reminder? One day, a package showed up on my doorstep. Just a plain cardboard box. Inside, a gift from a local creative advertising agency. A blue HOA t-shirt. I laughed so hard I nearly fell off the porch. And that, my friends, is how I became a local legend. The farmer who taught the HOA a lesson they'd never forget. And if they ever dare try again, well, Frank's still got plenty of dye. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.